Evening all, welcome to this very special report. We're going to look back at 12 months and we're going to look at Fanfest, which I think is going to be interesting. Now, to start with, look at that, all of the suits. Back then, we'd only had half of those suits, now we have them all, and I think everyone was really excited about the Mimitar Heavy and the Galante Heavy, and look, they're here and they're in the game. So, big tick all round. I think this is, it's going to be interesting to look at this, because certainly I think everybody's appetite was whetted, if that's a gross enough expression to use, last year. And I think what we've now got is we've got all of those suits. We have the scouts, all 4 scouts. We have obviously all of the medium frames, but then all of the heavies have now come as well. So this has been, I think, quite a big step forward. And I think, again, people kind of are kind of interested, I think, in terms of what the extent of the IP is going to do. So, you know, what CCP effectively are doing is increasing the IP of the game. So more intellectual property, but more things. So for example, when we look at guns, now we didn't get the knives, but we certainly have now all the pistols and certainly all the rifles. And I think, you know, even back then, a year ago, everybody was using the assault rifle, and I think maybe the scrambler rifle. But then, no, there wasn't. I don't think there was. I could be wrong, but I think it was just a selection of those. And now we have them all, and they're all just central and part to what we do: the rail rifle, the combat rifle, the scrambler rifle, the assault rifle, and so on. Yes, we're still missing the knives, but I think that could be something that they then draw in. Now, back then, 2013 FanFest, we had none of these guns. The scrambler rifle, the combat rifle, certainly we didn't have, and the rail rifle, absolutely not. And you think about how they've now been introduced to the game over the year, they certainly seem to have done, you know, some good stuff. However, there's still gaps, there's still room for more heavy guns, for example. Everybody's still using the heavy machine gun. I think there needs to be a more kind of extent there. Now, one of the things I have a bit of an issue with here is they did not include the Mimitar and Amar LAV, HAV, and dropships, and that would have been nice to see them. But I think give it time. I think, again, it's all about building on the basis of what they have, and I think these certainly weren't, you know, really desirable, needed things. But again, look at the designs of them. They look awesome, don't they? And I think we will see them in some way or another in the coming future. And I think, you know, again, they didn't promise these last FanFest, but it certainly was saying there should be one of everything for every race. And I kind of relate to that quite strongly. And I think that was quite important. The same goes for MCCs as well. So you see there we had the 2 we're familiar with, but also the 2 we're not. So I think that would be a nice addition as well, as, you know, maybe the racial MCCs eventually will come in. So even back, you know, a year ago, they were still saying no timeline for this. They weren't entirely sure when they would happen. But I think there certainly is something, you know, again, there's still quite a lot more to come. So I think there's something quite exciting about the future content as it stands. So we have our RDVs, but obviously there's racial RDVs as well. So if you're fighting for a particular side, you then should have the RDVs pertinent to that side. And I think there again is just, it's all detail. If the MCC is one model or another, if an RDV is one model or another, does that matter? Well, no, but it's all just detail. And I think this is the polish that I would expect to be done towards the end. Now, onto the medium assault vehicle. Now, we've not seen these, we've not heard height nor hair of them, but I suspect at some point we will, because the idea is quite a good one. With spawn pads and with things like the way that we play the game, the medium assault vehicle just isn't needed. The maps aren't big enough. There's no real need to have one. Whereas I suspect in the future that will change, and, you know, the mechanics will change and the game will change, and there will be a need for the medium assault vehicle. Maybe squad size is bigger than 6. Maybe that's one of the things. Maybe very large sprawling sandbox maps. Who knows? But I think it's going to be interesting. Fighters also never really kind of sort of came through. They weren't promised, again, so chill. But they are a nice idea, and I think at some point we will see the fighter mechanic come in. But again, I would stress, a lot of the content, I think, has been cleverly developed to fit the game, because so much of what we're looking at here in this screen is not necessarily going to work in Dust as it stands at the moment. So Dust has to evolve before these things become needed. Fighters, there's no point fighting on Ashlands because the map's only about 400 or 500 meters wide. It's pointless. And that goes for the medium assault vehicle as well. What role would it serve? So I think these are just things that eventually, we might see certainly in the future. And I think Hopefully, it'll be because the mechanics of the game change significantly. So the game evolves into something much bigger, much more open, and therefore you do get things like even bikes. Look at that. They even tempted me with jet bikes. Jet bikes. How exciting would that be? But either way, I think these are all polish, additional items that would not necessarily change the game for the better right now. Yes, more content for people who are there, but the new player experience wouldn't be enriched by any of this necessarily. What would enrich the new player experience is a whole new way of playing Dust, a whole new way of playing, the role and the maps and the game style and so on. I think too much at the moment is very formulaic. And I think the future of this game is going to be more, open world sandbox, etc. I think that has to be the way it goes, because at the moment, why on earth would you call a fighter in? How would you call a fighter in for a start? There's no runways. How would you call it into such a small map? What would it then do? What's the point of it? So Battlefield 4, the fighters kind of work because you spawn in them and then you're off and running, but the maps are also quite big. I think at the moment, Dust and the mechanics, again, the fighter would help nothing. The dropship can help ferry people around. The tank obviously has its benefit, but the fighter has no purpose whatsoever other than shooting down other fighters. So it's all a little bit kind of difficult to see, I guess, how that would have worked. Hence probably why we don't have it, which is a fair point. Jet bikes I would love to see with lances, electric lances, me dressed up in a great big suit of armor, riding across my fiefdom as I lance noobs and rogue drones in the face and just bring generally Pyrex's justice to the realm. I would love that. And that moves us on nicely to rogue drones, because rogue drones are obviously something that we know are coming, but how they're going to come, I don't know. And I'm interested to see that, because this is the beginning of PvE, and PvE to me is something that I'm really quite curious to see how they're going to draw this out. So last year, obviously, this was shown as concept art for an idea, and we were told categorically, don't expect this in a year. We know that somebody has been recruited to CCP Shanghai as a rogue drone expert, so that's quite exciting. But again, how would this work? The maps are so formulaic. How would you have an open world map in Dust where you can fight rogue drones? I can't see it. So to me, I think, again, all of this is content that you pile on top of a base, but at the moment that base is not fit for purpose. So to me, I think it's exciting to see this content. And they look pretty badass as well, don't they? And these would change in size. So you'd have like scout-sized drones, but then you'd have like tank-sized drones that you would then need also a tank probably to kill. That's so cool. I can't wait for this sort of thing. This is going to be just absolutely brilliant stuff. And I think, again, it does, and I hate to keep going back to it, but it does mean that the mechanics of the game as it stands at the moment don't really fit to make this work. So this was the idea, is that drone nests or hives, they would actually have some form of ability to self-replicate, and then it would be more of like a commander mode that I've always gone on about. And a commander mode, if you look at something like Dawn of War 2, or if you look at maybe Space Marine, I believe has it, these were just literally waves of NPCs that attack your commander, and you have to obviously use your skill and keep in your gang and keep yourself alive. And I really like this because it looks as if this also would be what the drones may do. This may have gone completely out the window because, again, this is a year old, but I thought it was worth reviewing it because, again, this was shown at last Fanfest as something that's potentially coming, and I really wanted to kind of just maybe make people aware of this, because we have people who've joined the game, in that time, and they maybe have not seen this footage. But either way, however they do it, it's going to be exciting. And I think, I hope it begins simply and softly, so it can be stupid AI that just rushes at you, and then we can obviously tank it easily, etc., that then eventually gets smarter and smarter. I would really, really like that. So here we go. That's obviously a little bit of the animation that they were going to build. So it would be, I don't know if it's warping in, or if it's transporting in, or if it's actually just being created. Who knows? But it's exciting. It's looking pretty awesome. And I think PvE, I think eventually they're going to have to talk about it at some point. But it's going to be interesting to see how it works, because I think all of a sudden, if you had a fourth contract mode that said PvE, it just wouldn't work. I just don't honestly think it would work. I think it needs something more. I think, this is why I would say the base of the game at the moment feels very locked and limited to add more content too. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of like you've got the old boy racer analogy I'd use here is you've got a shitty old Granada and the thing's falling apart and it's an absolute pile of shit. But what you do is you go down to Halfords and you spend $3,000 on crap, and you just plaster it all over it. It's not, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I'm not saying that Dust is crap at all, but I just think it's not fit for purpose to allow such, additional content and open world. In theory, PvE is very open world. That's really the point of it. So there we go. So I think that was the rogue drones. On to maps. Obviously, these were shown to us as additional maps that might eventually come through. And I think, again, now I look at this, we've kind of got a lot of this. We didn't get the funky trees. That'd be pretty cool, but I don't mind that too much. But in the background, you can see some of the buildings that we're very familiar with now. And I think really maps have been something that been quite interesting, because even back then, this is before Uprising, remember, because remember, FanFest happened before Uprising. It's the 28th of April. And then FanFest, announced the release of Dust on the 14th of May. So it was obviously Dust 514. And there you have obviously all the different things that came through, the different map styles. We've seen a few of them. I think we certainly saw weather. That was one of the big things they were increasing. So snow and tundra, and also the ability to have kind of day and night lights, like night cycles, things like that. Well, not night cycles, but they had day and night at least. So I think that kind of came through. But again, I would probably stress this is something that is always very difficult to illustratively show. So for example, here we go, a lava-based planet. In EVE, all of the planets are different types. There's about 8 or 9 different types of planet, from oceanic to lava and everything in between. Now, personally, I want a desert planet. If ever I can erect something on my own planet, it would be a desert world. Because I love Dune. I love the whole idea of Dune. It's just brilliant. And I would become the warrior of the sands. But anyway, and as you saw here, this was one of the things taunted in the bottom right, was the ability to fight on ships. So that's obviously really cool. That was supposed to be a Titan's reactor bay. We didn't see that, obviously, but I think they, the fact is they have moved in this direction quite well. So I would like to maybe summarize and conclude that in theory, a lot of what we were shown in terms of some of the basic things like suits, guns, etc., we did get. Some of the things like vehicles we didn't, but I suspect they're probably coming soon. And I think, again, are they important? Well, no. But, I think eventually they will become, important to the enrichment of the game. Levels, I think, have come as well, but I think, again, the way that the levels have been done is probably a bit cleverer than what they ended up doing here. The worst thing they could have done would be just to include like 5-6 different maps of which nothing changes. And what they've ended up doing is very similar maps with sockets that change. Now, I thought that was quite clever. I kind of accept that it can get a bit samey, but I think it's less samey than the same map. When you play Battlefield 4, everybody knows the map. Everybody knows the map. And it's a little bit disappointing because there's no randomness to it. And I suspect that the next generation of this game is going to be, 1.9 and beyond, is going to be something much bigger to do with the engine itself, the base system. Because all of these ideas, look at that, imagine fighting on a 3-dimensional layer. These needed the engine to be updated. And I think, zero gravity or maybe higher gravity, bullet drop being affected by gravity. These are all things that I think, I debate whether or not these could ever happen in Dust as it stands at the moment. So, perhaps this is where I think, the next generation of this game, maybe PS4, will be then pushing, maybe the technology a bit more. Who knows? At the end of the day, the FanFest keynote speech is going to be very important. And I would urge everyone to make sure that you watch it. And yes, I'm harping on about it, and you'll hear probably every day I talk about it, because I think this is going to be, if you're a fan of the game, or if you're not a fan of the game, this is the time to really get invested back in to see what they do with it. Because I tell you what, it could be something epic, or it could be something, not so epic. There's a polite way of saying it may all go wrong. But this is it. As a critic, we're going to be always critical of what CCP do. But critical does not mean negative. It means we're going to analyze what they do. And I think, I'm excited personally to see what the next steps are for this product, given that World of Darkness has been cancelled, given that, there seems to be a real drive with technology at the moment. Because, in all fairness, the next generation consoles have kind of failed. Their sales isn't great. The PS4 is not selling. It's pretty much lost to the Xbox One. I know a lot of you will be raging right now at that comment, but I'm afraid that's what that's what the industry is kind of admitting at the moment, is the Xbox kind of won. And I have no interest either way. I'm not a console man, but I think either way, it's a bit of a bumpy road ahead for what CCP plan to do with Dust 514. And I'm intrigued and excited to see where they potentially take it. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that retrospective. See you next time.